Hi guys, this is Dan. Welcome back to my channel. Last week I uploaded a very long video which is like 45 minutes and I'm not gonna lie, my throat did hurt and so there's only one video last week. Also, that video is about all the historical references of The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. I have spent quite a lot of time on the research about the Chinese history and also trying so hard to remember what had happened in the book. So if you have read that book and want to check out what sort of historical inspiration Ken Liu has adopted, go and check that video out, or you can just show some support to me, try to go like that video if you can. And then I was away again, which is a bit spontaneous. This time I went to Newcastle for a weekend and I will talk about it later because it was fun. As you know me, I don't normally read that much when I am on holiday. So in this vlog, I would like to get back to reading once again, do some home cooking, doing some interesting stuff, which you will know what it is later, but it will still be about books. So maybe we can talk about that Newcastle trip first. I went for 3 nights in total and then I spent 1 day in Durham. This is my first time going to Newcastle and my impression about it is there are lots of bridges. And there are quite a lot of old historical buildings as well, even for chain restaurant like Pizza Express or Cici in those buildings. It looks posh all of a sudden. It was quite busy in the weekend, you can see people going out, but overall I did enjoy it. And I also live in a hotel in the quayside, so every morning you can have a little stroll along the river, which was calming. From the last Manchester and Liverpool trip, you will know that I would love to do a football stadium tour. Newcastle got one too and it is called St. James Park. It is a bit disappointing, I'm not gonna lie, because I feel like there's not too much for visitors to see. All I can remember is there were lots of car parks around the stadium and you can't really tell, is it part of the stadium or is it a car park? It was a bit confusing. One very special thing I did is a once in a lifetime experience. I went to a Michelin star restaurant called House of Tides. Honestly, the food was amazing with the technique that you can definitely not replicate at home. Let's say the cod is very flaky and I also love how the trout is cured. The wine pairing is also great because I can try some wine that I would definitely not get in a shop, let's say English sparkling. It is always a wine that is quite pricey, but I got a chance to try it. Then one day I went down to Durham. It is actually not too far from Newcastle and it was only 15 minutes-ish on train. It is another town full of bridges, but the cathedral is very grand and massive. It was beautiful. But Durham itself is not a big city, it is a town, so I can only just spend 1 day in there. We are all book lovers, so did I get any new books from this trip? The answer is super simple. It is a no. I think the reason behind is that now I would like to get a hardcover new release, and if it is any old titles, I would prefer to read it on my Kindle rather than getting the paperbacks. And I did look at the Waterstones in both Durham and Newcastle. I just don't know why. All the new release now is either cozy fantasy or romantasy. I guess autumn is the time for cozy romantasy, but why suddenly romantasy is everywhere again? And these two subgenres are not really something I usually read. I did put my eye on 1 or 2 new releases, but there will be special edition of them from either Fairyloot or Ghostblood, which I will get it later in this month. So I just need to wait for my subscription to come rather than going to the shop and get it. So back to the reading. In this reading vlog, I would like to finish The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu, the second book of the Dandelion Dynasty. I started this book before going to Newcastle and I of course bring this with me on my holiday. Now I am more or less 70% into the book. Not too much left, but I still got quite a long way to go because it is a massive book. I will try my best to summarize this 70% very briefly. This book takes place some years after the first book. It is now the reign of Kuni, the House of Dandelion, and it is such a peaceful time. I would say that for this 70% I have read, I can put it into two parts. The first part is about the new imperial exam. After the conflict with Mata, Kuni and his minister set up this kind of new examination format to recruit talents from all over Dara. In here we follow one particular character called Zomi. There is such a long history to learn about her, such as her childhood, how she very likely met Luan, one of the most important advisors to Kuni, how she got into the troubles about the examination pass, and how did she meet Kuni's kids. This part I would say is very long. I would even say it is like 10 or 50% of it dedicated to this new character. Speaking of Kuni's kids, now he needs to think about who should be his successor. From the last book, we know that he got 3 kids, Timu, Thera, and Firo. Out of the 3, the one that actually shines is Thera, but unfortunately she is a girl, so Kuni needs to do something to make the nation get ready for a potential female ruler in the future. And then also about Kuni, this time we can talk about Jia, his wife. In the beginning of the book, quite shockingly, she has done quite a lot of things behind and tried to manipulate quite a lot of characters. All of these efforts are trying to prove that people with military power gonna revolt soon. Jia is like playing a catalyst trying to add wood to the fire to prove that she is right. So this sparked a really tense debate with Jin, another very important advisor to Kuni during the war. By the way, this had also happened in history. Jia's inspiration called Empress Liu tried to take down Han Xin, Jin's inspiration. But so differently in this story, Jin is still alive, but Han Xin was executed in history. Also in history, Empress Liu is quite controversial. Some people may say that she only cares about her own ruling, her power, and how her kid's gonna be the next successor. So she has to remove all those military men that gonna stop her. She also very brutally, very bloodily killed Liu Ban's wife. Liu Ban is the inspiration of Kuni in history. In the Wall of Storms, I would say that Ken Liu did modify Empress Liu or Jia a little bit, making her less cold-blooded and give some more background about her motives. Whether you agree with her way of proving herself or not, I'm not sure in this book or the future too, would Jia try to do something more or even try to claim the throne? If she did it, I will definitely talk about it later. And then coming to the second part, it is more about the external threat. The Liu Chu Emperor, I don't know how to say it properly. This is an empire outside Dara. It is like a separate island. And then there is like a barrier made up of storms to prevent these two nations traveling to each other. At first, it was like a very sudden secret invasion to the state where Timu the prince was. Sato, my favorite character, the funny firm believer of Confucius, tried to go and see what is actually going on, but once again he read all the signs wrong and even gave out some intel to the invaders. At last, thanks to Sato giving out such important intel to the enemy, no one can really stop this invasion. And also, the Liu Chu, I'm not sure how you say it again, can ride a mythical creature called Giraffin. They can fly and breathe fire, which is like overpower. This gives them such a huge advantage in this invasion. And then we are back to the palace, seeing this massive external danger coming. Jia needs Jin's talents, and it is great to see all of them work together again, like the war with Mata before. With other female talents, let's say Princess Thera and Somi, through a letter from a traitor, they can gather quite a lot of useful intel about this sudden invasion and that mythical creatures they don't really know about. At last, they can come up and launch a counterattack which was epic again. After this epic battle, we're gonna jump back and learn about the past. How this battle and this shocked me with what Somi finds out. I mean, it was heartbreaking. Then we will jump back to the flashback of Luan and learn about how the Liu Chu leader, Tan Ryo, come to power. Honestly, this part is once again very dry. It is like reading a history book. Liu's journey after meeting Somi is exciting, but do I need a very detailed survival story of him? No. What he gonna see in the sky or in the sea, how he gonna find food or water. I think there's a lot going on with this part of the plot. I just find there's like too much about how he can survive this threat, but there's no wow factor or surprising elements to us because we're gonna know that he will survive. So in my mind, I was a bit impatient. I was like, when will you get to the land? I can't wait to find out what you're gonna encounter later to make you like this now. Then I think Tamro's past is more exciting. We're gonna jump to the other side of the world that we barely know. We're gonna find out the different way of how people live and their culture. What was the history in this land until Tamros unites everyone? How brutal he will be to develop loyalty in his own army, and also how smart he is as a strategist. His chapters are definitely more bloody, more brutal, more graphic, but I find it more entertaining compared to the survival story of Yuan. I don't have much of the Wall of Storms left, so I hope that I can finish it quickly in this vlog. And also, we're gonna do some fun activities together. What is it? We're gonna find out later. So I have just read another 10%-ish of the Wall of Storms. I wouldn't say there are so much going on. It is more about how the Dendania court respond to this external threat. It is more like discovering new talents, some sort of weird scientific findings. Also, maybe finding out what's so special about the enemy's mythical creatures. There is some love interest cooking between Princess Farah and Somi. It is like through mutual admiration, this love interest sort of developed. And I also appreciate the fact that now the ruling of the Dendanian court is mostly in the hand of the female, and we can see what sort of talents this group of female can bring. And I mean, it is quite uncommon to see that now the ruling or the power switching from the hand of male to female. Quite shockingly, there is quite an unexpected turn for Prince Timu, the eldest son. The enemy kind of manipulate his personality to achieve their goal. But now we're going to do some funny activities together. Don't worry, we're not doing something naughty. Don't worry. Long ago, I ordered this kind of plastic wraps from, you can tell, Angstoms. And they are just for hardcovers. What I have been doing in the last few weeks since I got these plastic wraps is to wrap my hardcovers, especially for those special editions, to give them a better protection. And I do think that they look better with this kind of plastic wraps over it. So I guess we can take our time to do some crafty bookish thing other than just like reading, you know. And I have already chosen my books. Firstly, I have the last two subscription book from the Broken Binding. This is the Jade Legacy and this is the Dragonbone Chair. This one marks the end of the Jade Legacy and this one marks the start of a new series. And then I also have the Judas Blossom and the Blood Dim Tide. You can tell because I read with the dust jacket on. This like foiling is kind of like off now, so we can see the power of these plastic covers. At last, I also have the latest Very Lewd September book, and it is The Gods Below. My goal is to wrap up all the subscription books first because I got them monthly, and then I will slowly moving towards my hardcovers on the shelves, doing it one by one. I don't really need to wrap them all at one go because I keep getting hardcovers, so there's no rush to it. You know what I mean? Let's get crafty. And I still got time and more shit, so I guess I would wrap more up. All done. So very quickly come to the end of this vlog because I have finished The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. To be honest, I don't really know how I really feel about this book. What I do love about the first book is how Ken Liu adopt a historical period of time and turn it into a fantasy world. But coming to this second book, I wouldn't say this element is as strong as the first one. This invasion of the foreign race, I would say it is a bit fictional, and even how Cooney died is so different in history. Before deep dive talking about how I feel about The Wall of Storms, I actually went to Gosper today and picked up a pre-order. And it is a Tide of Black Steel by Anthony Ryan, and it is a Gosper special edition. I never read anything by this author yet, and this is a new series. So I would say it is a good starting point for this author. Also, I only got this because 2 or 3 weeks ago, Gosper did a sale because of the bookshop day. It is around like 25 or even 30% off, and it is such a bargain. I can't resist my temptation to get more books. And now we can really talk about how I feel about The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. Maybe we can firstly talk about how this story ends. For the Dandelion Court, everyone is preparing so hard for this final confrontation because the Lecture sent an ultimatum to them. Before this final confrontation, there was like some signs from the gods that the Dandelion Court can pick up. Let's say they can use locusts, this insect, to eat out all the grains, eat out all the supply for the foreign race. So the mythical creature, Gary Nothing, couldn't eat their normal food supply, they have to eat grain instead, but this could create some biological problem with it. And I think Ken Liu did like explain the biological science behind, and I think it is so different in a fantasy world, I would say. This final confrontation, I would say, is so well executed, and I think the scale is like the largest so far in the story. I do like Jin's 3 waves of tactics. They have recruited quite a lot of talents before this final confrontation. Let's say the silk electric magic thing, and then they try to dissect what like the mythical creatures is like inside the body, so they can prepare the weapons or like what tools they have to use in this battle. Not just like making these special aircrafts, making like this kind of special weapons, but also put them into a very systematic formation as well. I would say they have done quite an extensive research on how to defeat these mythical creatures, this impossible Jera. All of this, I would say, is so smart. And then coming back to the side characters that we have been following here and there, those old tyros, they lost thinking that they can get back the power by betraying Kuni again, even though they have been given a second chance to leave. Before this final confrontation, they have already set up a network of spies across all those warships, and they are ready for that moment. This makes Jin's plan didn't go well and they have to improvise. And I did enjoy how Jin's storyline ends in this book. It is really sad, and I think that ending did live up to her title in this story. From someone who is a bit ambitious but values honor and glory, and because of this belief, she was misunderstood as a traitor, but also thanks to Jia's plan. But now she has to come back and rescue this shit, and this epic ending fight with the literal leader Tamriel, I think all of it is quite emotional. And don't forget, Jin is also a woman fighting so hard for like the gender equality in the story as well. I think all of it is like so much for this character. Also with Jin's defense and Jia's acting, the enemy thinks that there are something big hidden in the city for the defense. Thinking like that, and the enemy is running low on resources and the morale isn't great, they have to retreat. But in fact, there are nothing in the city. And then coming to the ending, Princess Thera is named as the successor for Kuni. She has a big job to do though. Prince Takfu, I think is how you pronounce it, from the clan Argan, come to the Dandanian court and offers them the eggs of the Jera. So hard to say it. In return, he needs the court to help him to free his people. So Thera has to travel to the other side of the world, and also means that the love between her and Somi has come to an end too. It is, of course, sad, but I won't say it is heartbreaking. The reason behind is I think the romance in this book is kept to a minimum. Even though there are time for these two to be together, but you don't feel like they are like officially a couple yet. I don't know why, but I just feel like the romance isn't that strong compared to other elements in the book. Another interesting point is that now Dara and the Literal Empire are both worshipping the same gods. This leads to the change of how the gods look like. One of them even give up its divinity and become a human and join the crew of Thera. I don't know how this part gonna play out or even what's gonna happen with these gods in the future, which is kind of exciting to find out. But I just think that this may not be like the best book yet. This book feels like to me passing the legacy to the next generation. Without much spoiler here, most of the followers of Kuni since the Dandanian Chrysanthemum War, their storyline will be nearly over in this second book, which I do feel sad about because we have been following them since the beginning of the campaign. But without it, we won't see how time gonna progress, how this Dandanian court gonna move on from the old conflict. Or some interesting drama, the seeds that have been sown since the first book. Like I said earlier, what I do like about this series so far is the historical references. But coming to this book, other than the misunderstanding of Jin, the little rebellion from the old Tarot states, as well as Jia comes to power, the biggest plot in this book, the invasion of this foreign race, is a made-up. So it is quite different from the first book because there is no solid historical framework for Ken Liu to follow. Let's say Princess Clara has to marry someone that is not from her country. This nearly happened in history, but the Empress at that time strongly opposed to it, so this never come to reality. Talking about things I still don't like is the really dry explanation of science and engineering, or even like reading a Wikipedia page of certain characters. I know some of you do feel the same about the first book, but unfortunately this one have the same problem. In this book, we are introduced two new important characters, Zomi, the examiner, and then Tamriel, the foreign race leader. The way we got to know about them is like reading a bibliography of them. What they have seen, what they have done, how they feel, we know every single detail of them. I would say that sometimes how this dot's gonna connect in the future is smart, but it is just like so dry to get through. Especially when you can write exciting epic battles, why not for the background of these characters as well? And then we also have the solo survival story of Luan and how he met certain characters. This part, again, I would just say it is just too long to get through. It is not too exciting or entertaining. And I feel like we want the outcome rather than the progress of this like Alone on the Sea, Adventures of the Pie moments. Also, when all these scholars try to dissect the mythical creature Giraffe and how they come up with certain silk pun technology, again, they are like full-on explanation about the science and engineering behind how this internal organ of this mythical creature is gonna do to certain properties. And then for this mechanism, if I drop this thing, what will happen? We got lots of explanation behind, but I do appreciate it, but it's just like too much to get through. Again, when everything comes together, it will make sense and you will be impressed by it. But I just want to question, do we need every single detail of every mechanism in this world? Honestly, I don't know how to rate this book. I did enjoy all those epic battles and I do enjoy seeing all these characters in this chaotic world. None of them is flat in this story. But quite a lot of time, I did struggle a little bit to get through all those drier side of the story. So because of this, I think I will give this book a 3-star, but don't hate me if you like it. You will know what I mean and you will understand why I give such a rating if you have read this book too, I guess and I hope. But does it mean that I would DNF the whole series? Of course not. I have invested so much time already, I can't give up at this point. I have heard that the next book is more like the setup for the 4th book, which is like the epic conclusion. And I guess I will be like Jean when she is fighting the Giraffe. Needs to take its time, waiting the best moment to attack. So I hope that I can finish the 3rd book in November, meaning that I will finish the last book in December, finishing the whole series as well. So if you have enjoyed this reading vlog, don't forget to give it a like. If you don't want to miss any content from me, make sure you have subscribed to my channel. I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye.